The morning Raymond Whitfield walked into that dealership, he was carrying a cashier's check for $87,000. He just didn't look like it. That was the thing nobody ever said out loud, but everybody acted on. Raymond was 53 years old, wore a Carhartt jacket that had seen better days, drove a '09 Silverado with mud still caked on the wheel wells from the property he'd been working that week. His hands were rough. His boots were older than some of the sales staff. And when he pushed open the glass door of Hargrove Luxury Motors in Decatur, Georgia, on a Tuesday morning in March, not a single person moved to greet him. He stood there for a moment, looked around at the gleaming floors, the S-Class Mercedes rotating on a platform in the center of the showroom, the salespeople clustered near the back talking among themselves. One of them glanced up, made brief eye contact, looked away. Raymond had been here before, not this dealership specifically. But this moment, he knew what it was. He walked toward the nearest vehicle, a midnight blue 2024 GLS 580, and ran his hand along the hood. That's when a young man in a brown suit appeared, not to help, to intercept. "Sir." The word came out like a period at the end of a sentence that hadn't been written yet. The young man's name tag read Brett. "Are you perhaps looking for someone? The service department is actually around the side." Raymond looked at him, calm. The way a man gets calm after a lifetime of practice. "I'm looking at this vehicle," Raymond said. Brett smiled with his mouth only. "Of course. Well, this is actually our top-of-the-line trim, the GLS 580. It starts at around $82,000. I know what it starts at." Right. Brett glanced toward the back of the showroom, a quick flicker, like he was looking for backup or an exit. "Well, if you're interested in something in a different range, we do have certified pre-owned vehicles over at our sister location on Candler Road. I'd be happy to call over there, and I didn't ask about Candler Road." Brett's smile stayed fixed. "Of course not. I just want to make sure we're, finding the right fit." Raymond let the silence sit for a moment. He'd learned that silence does work that words can't. He looked back at the GLS 580. Walked slowly around to the passenger side, opened the door, sat down in the front seat. Brett stood there, uncertain what move to make next. "Now, before we go any further, if you're new here, welcome to Heritage Tales. We tell stories about dignity, about people who refuse to be made small, and about what happens when the world finally catches up to who they really are. Hit that subscribe button and stay with us, because this one is just getting started." Raymond Whitfield had grown up in Macon, the second of 5 children. His father, a man named Ernest, worked 31 years at a textile plant, and died with nothing but a paid-off house and a name that people respected in a 3-block radius. Raymond had watched that, and decided early that the radius needed to be bigger. He didn't go to college right away. He went to work. Construction first, then contracting, then slowly, over 2 decades of 7-day weeks, and reinvested profits, he built Whitfield Land and Development into a company that managed commercial properties across 4 counties. By the time he was 50, Raymond owned more square footage in the Atlanta metro area than most people would ever set foot in. He had 17 employees, 2 accountants, and a lawyer he paid a monthly retainer. He also still wore the Carhartt jacket. He liked it. It reminded him of where he came from, and he'd never seen a reason to perform wealth for strangers. His wife, Noelle, had once suggested he dress differently when he went into certain establishments. He understood what she meant. He also knew that changing your jacket didn't change what certain people were going to see when they looked at you. So he kept the jacket. He had come to Hargrove Luxury Motors because Noelle's birthday was in 3 weeks. She'd mentioned the GLS once. Exactly once, 2 months ago, passing a billboard on I-20. Raymond had been paying attention. He'd done his research, selected the options, arranged financing through his business accounts, and had the cashier's check cut the morning before he walked in. He had also sent an email inquiry 2 days prior through the dealership's website. He never got a response. He sat in the front seat of the GLS and felt the leather and knew it was right. He got back out and looked for someone who might actually want to sell him a car. Brett had retreated. In his place stood a woman named Candace, the floor manager, who had apparently been watching from near the finance office. She approached with a different energy, Not hostile, but bureaucratic. The kind of neutrality that is its own kind of dismissal. I understand you're interested in the GLS 580, she said. I am. I'd like to do a test drive and then talk about availability in Obsidian Black with the executive package. Candace's expression shifted just slightly. That's a popular configuration. Lead time can be 6 to 8 weeks. That's fine. My wife's birthday is in 3 weeks, but I can have something arranged for the day with a deposit, and she can take delivery when it comes in. Candace nodded slowly. Then, are you pre-approved through a lender, or I have a cashier's check? Another shift, smaller this time, but Raymond caught it. For the full amount? For the full amount. She looked at him for a moment that lasted one beat too long. Could I ask where you're financing through? Raymond set his jaw. I told you, I have a cashier's check. I'm not financing. Right, of course. She cleared her throat. I'll just need to verify. Verify what? The question landed flat and exact. Candace blinked. It's standard procedure to. Is it standard to ask the person who walked in before me? Raymond said. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. Down the showroom floor, a white man in a golf shirt was being walked through the features of a C-Class by 2 smiling salespeople. Nobody had asked him to verify anything. Candace followed his gaze, looked back, said nothing useful. I'd like to speak with the general manager, Raymond said. Mr. Aldrich is in a meeting. I'll wait. He went and sat down in one of the waiting chairs near the entrance. He took out his phone and opened his email. He was patient. He had the particular patience of a man who had learned that showing agitation gives other people permission to dismiss you. He sat with his back straight and his phone in his hands, and he waited. Now, here's the part that matters. Here's what Candace and Brett, and the general manager, whose name was Philip Aldrich, did not know about the man sitting in their waiting area in a Carhartt jacket. Raymond Whitfield had, 4 months prior, signed a letter of intent to purchase a commercial property on Covington Highway, a 2.3-acre parcel that had been sitting in limbo for 2 years. The seller was an investment group. The investment group's silent partner, a fact not publicly listed anywhere, was a man named Warren Jessup. Warren Jessup was the regional director of operations for Hargrove Automotive Group, the company that owned this dealership. But Raymond didn't lead with that, because Raymond had been in enough rooms to know that you don't show your cards until the hand is played. Philip Aldrich came out 22 minutes later. He was mid-50s, gray at the temples, wearing a blazer over an open-collar shirt. He extended a hand with the particular warmth of a man who has been told there might be a problem. Mr. Whitfield, Phil Aldrich, I apologize for the wait. What can I help you with today? Raymond stood, shook the hand, said, plainly, I came in to purchase a GLS 580 in Obsidian Black with the executive package. Your staff spent the last 40 minutes either ignoring me, sending me to a different location, or asking me to verify a cashier's check that no one else in this room has been asked to verify. Aldrich's jaw tightened. I apologize if there was any confusion. It wasn't confusion. The room had gotten quiet the way rooms do when a conversation turns into something else. I understand, Aldrich said, carefully. I assure you we'd like to earn your business. Let me personally. I want to ask you something first, Raymond said. Does your company have a standard policy requiring cashier's check verification before a test drive? Aldrich hesitated. It can be, in certain, yes or no. No, Aldrich admitted. It is not standard. Then I'd like to know why it was standard for me. Aldrich didn't answer that. He couldn't answer that honestly, and he seemed to know it. If you've ever been in a room where you know the truth, and someone else knows the truth, and both of you are watching each other, decide what to do with it. You know what that moment looked like. Raymond had been in those rooms his entire life. He'd learned that the person who speaks next loses something. He didn't speak. Aldrich finally said, Why don't we get you set up with a test drive? I'll personally handle the paperwork. I appreciate that, Raymond said. But first I'd like to make a phone call. He stepped aside and dialed. 2 rings. Warren, Raymond said. It's Raymond Whitfield. I'm standing in one of your dealerships in Decatur. I want to let you know that before I finalize anything on the Covington Highway property, I'm going to need to have a conversation about the experience I'm having here today. He listened for a moment, nodded once. "I'll hold," he said, and he sat back down in the waiting chair. The next 4 minutes were the quietest 4 minutes Hargrove Luxury Motors had seen in some time. Candace had disappeared entirely. Brett was suddenly very busy at a desk near the back. Philip Aldrich stood near the finance office with his phone pressed to his ear, his expression doing a series of things that Raymond did not bother to watch. "Let's stop here for a second, because I want to talk to you directly. If you've ever walked into a room and felt invisible, not because you weren't there, but because someone decided not to see you, then you know what Raymond carried in his chest that day. That weight. That particular exhaustion that comes not from one moment, but from 1,000 moments stacked behind it. He wasn't angry. He was something harder to name. He was tired of having to be the most prepared person in every room, just to be treated the same as everyone else. And if that speaks to something you've lived, I want you to drop a word in the comments. Just so you know you're not alone in this." Raymond's phone buzzed. He answered. "Yes," he said, "I understand. Thank you, Warren." He stood up. Philip Aldrich was walking toward him now, and his whole posture had changed. Something had left it. Some of the structure that authority loans you, it was gone. "Mr. Whitfield," he said, "I want to sincerely apologize. Warren has spoken to me directly. I want you to know that what happened here today does not reflect." "Save that for your staff meeting," Raymond said, not unkindly. "Right now I'd like to take that GLS out for 20 minutes, and then I'd like to sit down and put together the paperwork. Of course, absolutely. Whatever you need." The test drive was everything Noel had looked at on that billboard. Raymond took it out on Memorial Drive, merged onto 285, felt the acceleration push him back into the seat in a way that was quiet and total, and completely assured. He thought about Ernest, his father, who had died in a Buick with 190,000 miles on it. He thought about the first piece of property he'd ever bought. A half-acre lot that everybody else thought was worthless, that he'd held for 8 years and sold for 4 times what he paid. He thought about Noelle and how she'd said it once, just passing a billboard, not even asking, just noticing. He drove back to the dealership. Now, here's what you need to know about the hours that followed, because the story doesn't end with a test drive. Philip Aldrich handled the paperwork himself. Raymond sat across from him in the general manager's office, the cashier's check on the desk between them, and he was methodical. He asked about the executive package, line by line. He requested the window sticker. He asked about delivery timeline and got a commitment in writing. He was precise and unhurried and thorough, and everyone who worked in that dealership, who passed the glass office, saw it. He also asked one more thing. "I'd like a written acknowledgement," Raymond said, "that the verification request made to me earlier today was not consistent with your standard policy." Aldrich paused. "I'm not sure our legal team would." "That's fine," Raymond said. "I can wait on the purchase while we sort that out. The Covington Highway conversation can also wait." He paused. Warren mentioned he'd been hoping to close that by end of quarter. Aldrich picked up his pen. He wrote a brief statement on dealership letterhead. He signed it. He slid it across the desk. Raymond folded it and put it in the inner pocket of his Carhartt jacket. "Before we finish, and I mean this, hit that like button right now if you believe that what a man carries in his chest is more important than what he wears on his back. Because what Raymond did that day wasn't about a car. It was about something that doesn't have a sticker price." The GLS 580 in obsidian black arrived 19 days later, 4 days before Noelle's birthday. Raymond had arranged for a large bow to be placed on the roof, which Noelle later described as deeply corny and completely perfect. She cried, not because of the car. She cried because she knew what it had cost him, not in dollars, but in the particular currency that black men in America spend every day, just to stand in rooms where they have every right to stand. She knew the jacket. She knew what he'd decided when he wore it. She knew that he had walked in there with a check and his name and his dignity, and refused to let any one of them be questioned without consequence. Brett left Hargrove Luxury Motors 6 weeks later. Whether by choice or otherwise, nobody said publicly. Candace was moved to a non-customer-facing role. Philip Aldrich sent Raymond a handwritten note the following month. A real one, not a form letter. not acknowledging that what had happened was wrong and that he had used the experience to review his team's practices. Raymond read it once and put it in a drawer. He didn't need it, but he appreciated that it existed. The Covington Highway deal closed on schedule. Warren Jessup attended the signing. He and Raymond shook hands over a conference table in a downtown Atlanta law office, and if either of them mentioned the afternoon in the dealership, it was only briefly, and only as a thing that had already been handled by a man who knew exactly who he was, in a jacket that said exactly as much as he wanted it to. And when Noelle drove that GLS for the first time, windows down, April air, Raymond in the passenger seat watching her smile, she reached over at a red light and put her hand on his. "You didn't have to do all that," she said. Raymond looked out the windshield. "I know," he said. "But somebody's got to."